This conference will now be recorded.
Can someone please confirm, are you able to see my screen and is I'm audible to everyone? Yes, no.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so just a heads up from my end. Today's session might be of like 1 hour, 30 minutes or 90 minutes because we need to cover a lot of things. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So till at this point, we have covered VPC, and my plan is to cover as much as possible today. So yesterday we have created our own VPC or called a custom VPC, where we have created a route table, network hackers, security group, and internet gateway. Okay, so let's get started from there. And yesterday I didn't ask you guys much of an interview type question, so let's start it from that point itself. Okay, cool. Okay, so we have created this VPC called My Test VPC, right? And this is a subnet we have assigned to it, 10.0.1.0/24 and 10.2/24. And yesterday I showed you guys one website called cider.xyz. Okay, and if we go to this website, 10/24, I need to put someone on mute. Reddy Shekhra, I need to put your mute. Okay. So yesterday I showed you guys this website called cider.xyz, and if you look at this subnet, right, we have choose /24 as a subnet. And if you look at this, the first IP is 1.1, the last IP is, or we have choose 10.0. The first IP is 10.0, 1.1, and the last IP is this. And based on this, we will get 256 subnet or 256 IP. That is, we can set up 256 hosts in this particular subnet. Okay. Now, if you go back here and check the subnet, either 2.10.1.0, 10.2.0, we are only getting a 251 as an available IP address. Okay. Now I will pause for 1 minute or 30 seconds, and this is a question for you guys, and this is one of the interview questions. Why we are only getting a 251 as an IP address? Why we are not getting all the 256 as a host IP? You can reply it via the Slack channel, which will be much easier and quicker. But why we are only getting a 251? We are supposed to get 256 IP. Yes, Ashok is correct. Anyone else? So meanwhile, I will post you guys this talk. So if you go to this doc, this one, no, Reddy Shekhar. So if you go to this doc, check this place, this guy. Okay. Copy this here and paste it here. So if you look at here, whatever the subnet range we are going to choose, the first IP is going to be reserved for network, and the last IP is going to be reserved for 10.0.255. And remember this, AWS or the VPC does not support broadcast. So that's why they reserve this IP, this 255. The first one is the VPC router, which we are going to see today. they reserve this IP for this VPC router. 10.0.0.2 is for the AWS DNS server. So let's say if I have stepped, rather than using 10.0. Whatever subnet is, if I'm going to choose this as a subnet range, let's say 16, then in that case, my DNS IP will be 0.2. Or if I'm going to choose 192.168, in that case, 192.168.0.2 is my DNS IP. So depending upon your subnet range, your second IPs always are DNS IP. The third IP is reserved by AWS for any future use. They haven't mentioned in any of the documentation what is the purpose of this, but they said they are going to reserve it for the future use. If anyone know what is the use of that, please let me know. But as far as I know, in the documentation, it is not clear what is the use of this IP. So whenever you are going to create any subnet, you are going to lose 5 IPs at least. Okay, and that's why I mentioned that the I need to mute someone. Okay, good. So that's why last time I mentioned that the minimum subnet range you can choose in AWS is /16, and the maximum you can go up to /28. And the reason you can go up to /28, if you go here and put this as a /28, you will see that you are getting a 16 as a count. And out of these 16, you are going to miss 5 IP. So that means you can only establish 11 hosts in that particular subnet. If I go below that, let's say I'm going to use 29. So in that 29, I am only going to get up 8 hosts. And out of those 8 hosts, you're going to lose 5 IPs. So that means you are only going to get 3 IPs. That is, you can only establish 3 hosts in that particular subnet. So that's why AWS recommends that the minimum you can go is /28. Is that part is clear? Or any question regarding this? Because this is one of the questions when I'm going through these various websites. This has been asked in some of the interviews, like why we are losing those 5 IPs. So I think it's good to know the reason behind that. Any question? Okay, I will take it as a yes. So the next point is, let me reiterate these things one more time. So we have created all these things, right? The custom route table, the NACL, the security group, or some of these are created by default. We have created this, for example, internet gateway and the custom route table. Okay, we haven't touched these parts. Still, if I'm going to create a server in my public subnet, and you know why it is a public subnet, because we have associated a custom route table to it. So in the custom route table, we have defined an internet gateway, and via that internet gateway, we are connecting to the external world, right? Somehow my internet is saying. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, Prashant.
Yeah, there's a notes. Yeah, this is notes section.
Anyways, again got stuck. One second, guys. Oh. Okay, so while this is loading, just a question for you guys. So even at this moment of time, if I try to create an instance in a public subnet, still it will not get a public IP. Okay, so what is the missing piece in this puzzle so far? We still need to configure one thing, and what is that part which you need to configure?
You need to make it as a public, subnet. That one.
We already make it as a public subnet, so there's
We need
still one thing which we are missing.
Internet gateway.
We already assigned the internet gateway yesterday.
Okay, so I missed that session. Sorry. Okay, so
You'll have to select auto assign public IP, that option.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah,
part is still missing. So while this is loading, I'm still waiting for this to be loaded, and there's still issue with my internet connection. Just give me 1 second. My internet is fine. I think it's something to do with the AWS. Are you guys able to see my screen, or still it is a stuck state?
Yeah, it's visible now.
Sorry guys, I can't do anything for this internet. Okay, so if you go to this public subnet, I hope you guys are able to see it now, and scroll all the way down. Okay, this auto assign. It's not moving. So it's auto assign public IP still set to no. So what exactly you need to do? Go here and modify this auto assign IP setting. And I know these things are easy to miss, so that's why I gave you guys yesterday the Terraform script, so where you can configure all those things. So in future, if you need to build a VPC, whatever the VPC you are going to build in future, they already have this auto assign public IP set to yes. Okay. If you guys did not get that script, I will share it with you guys today again. Okay. So now we have a two subnet. One is public subnet and one is private subnet. So the next step is, let's quickly go through it and create two instances, one in public subnet and one in private subnet. And I'm not going to discuss much about like what are the different components while creating the EC2 servers, because I'm going to take one more session where we are just going to discuss about the EC2 server. So let's go to my EC2 screen. Okay, I will say launch instance. I will choose Amazon AMI. You can choose any AMI here. Okay, and or let me give you just a quick introduction. What are those things? These things. So first thing you need to choose is the AMI. AMI stands for Amazon Machine Image. So think of it like a ISO image, the image which you need to set up your system. So these are the operating system images. So for the time being, I'm choosing this Amazon AMI. Then you have a broad range of instance family. So depending upon your requirement, you can choose these instances. So because I'm choosing T2.micro, which comes in the free tier family, and it provides me 1 CPU and 1 GB of memory. Then there is called a memory optimized. They are called something called CPU optimized, IO optimized. So you can see these are compute optimized. So there are different instances of family depend upon your requirement. So I'm not going to discuss much about it at this stage, but in future I'm going to take a special session or a session where we are just going to discuss about these compute instances. So I'm choosing T2.micro. Configure instance detail. This is the important point. So here, rather than choosing a default VPC, I'm going to choose a VPC which we have just created or we have created yesterday. First, let me start with the public subnet. We are going to choose this public subnet. And here you see auto assign public IP. If we did not turn on that option, like we have turned it out a few minutes back, this portion is not highlighted for us, or this is not enabled for us by default. So your instance will not get a public IP. Okay.
Prashant,
And
one question. If you don't mind, can you go back one question? That auto assign, right? There are two options. One you selected one, there is one more option called enable. So which one we need to select? Just one, or there is enable also? I know I have selected earlier enable option also. So which one is correct option?
Okay, yeah, you're correct. I always choose the enable. This is something looks new to me. Yeah, honestly, I don't know. Means AWS, they changes the infrastructure every day almost. So might be something new.
If you're not selecting anything, I think it comes by default one.
Yeah, means it's
no, yeah, I know this is by default.
Prashant, while creating the subnet also you get this option. So at that time also you can create select disable or enable. So right now this subnet setting is enabled.
If you want to disable, then specifically you can disable. Otherwise, it will by default it is enabled.
Okay, I mean, let me go through it and then I will show you while we are selecting. okay, let's select here. So if you select the private subnet, you will see that subnet setting is disabled for auto assign public IP. So you guys are correct, but I need to dig more into it why this is happening, because he's correct. Like, it's always enable or disable. So maybe they have changed something.
Because I changed it to enable, it worked as well in once I creating the subnet.
Okay, and you are saying without setting up auto assign public IP during the subnet configuration?
No, I said instead of this option, I selected enable option.
No,
So
Prashant, I
maybe
was saying like while creating the subnet also you'll get this option. So right now it's a public subnet, so the automatically it's enabled. So it's showing
Okay.
you enabled. So you can go ahead and disable it. Or you do have option of enable, but that is it's showing you that it's already enabled because it's a public subnet. So
Okay, but here while creating a subnet, where we will get that option? I'm not seeing any option while creating a subnet that we will get any option.
maybe you
Or
selected auto assign IP, maybe this one, right? For subnet. Maybe enable, I
yeah,
don't know which, yeah, maybe if you selected that one, so that might be the reason first option is coming. Otherwise, we
modify
normally will
auto
see.
assign IP settings is there, right, in
Yes.
yeah.
actions.
I
You are
agree
right.
with
Yeah.
you guys. This is something which I haven't seen yet, like use subnet setting enabled. It always need to be enable or disable. I'm seeing this option first time. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, got it.
Or maybe I have seen it or I'm missing something. Okay, I will dig more into it and let you guys know. Let's not hang up on this one because we need to cover a lot of things today. So yeah, I will let you guys know if I found out something, or if you know something more about it, just let me know.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Prashant.
Next, add storage. We will go with the default storage option. Add tag. So let's add tag over here. I'm going to assign it as a public server just to make it clear. Security group. Let's give it a name. I always okay. And I just want the SSH to be enabled for everyone. Just one thing, if you choose my IP, Amazon is smart enough to automatically, like, this website called what is my IP. So based on this, it will automatically detect your IP and populate this wizard. So I will go with the custom one, and for the time being, not the custom one, but means you can give the custom CIDR range also, or you can mention anywhere. The first bit is for IPv4 and the last bit is for IPv6. :/0. Review and launch. Okay, let me create a new key here. Download it. Okay. And just to give you guys some idea, there's one popular question, like if you select some key here, and for example, if you miss that key, if you lost that key, will you be able to retrieve that key? And the reason is it's difficult to retrieve that key. It's possible to retrieve that key, but it's difficult because at this point of time, when you are creating this key, the private portion of that key is being downloaded here, and the public portion of this key is being copied to your system authorize_key file. So you have a directory called .sh, the hidden directory, and this point of time, that public part of this key is being copied to that directory. So that is the reason why if you lost that key, it's difficult to recover it. But there are options, like you can mount that volume into some other server as a secondary volume, and then you can clean it out from there. But that I'm going to show you later. But remember this point, is at this point of time, you're only getting the private part of the key. The public portion of that key is being copied to your server. Okay. So we have created this instance on the public subnet. Let me create one more instance on the private subnet. And while these are launching, we are going to discuss something. We are going to move to the next topic. So let me go quickly over this. This time we are selecting the private subnet. This is default. This one. Private server. Okay. Only 22 port. Review and launch. Okay. So this will take few minutes. So while these servers are launching, let's move to the next topic. But before that, do you guys have any questions so far?
While creating this EC2 instance, is there any way to get desired means whatever we want that private IP address? Because after this, it will IP will be getting automatically assigned, right?
Yes.
Private IP, I mean.
And do you know from where this IP is getting assigned?
From that subnet range, right?
Yeah, from the subnet range, but there should be something behind the scene which is responsible for assigning that IP. So for example, this private server, now it gets this IP, right? 10.2.1.0.8, or this public server, it got this 10.1.113 or public IP, this guy. Yeah, sorry, you will finish your question first and then we will discuss.
No, my question is finished. Like how these IPs are getting assigned? Means is there any algorithm or something?
Okay, so if you go here, this guy, the one thing which we haven't discussed is called something called DHC option set.
DHC.
So by default, when you create this server, or not server, sorry, we are creating a server. So the correct term is when we are creating this VPC, there is something called DHCP option set, which is created for us by default. And what are these DHCP option sets? First thing, let me be clear, you cannot modify this DHCP option set. If it's created, the only way you can do it is like to create, if you want to configure your own custom DHCP server or DNS server, you need to create a new one. See, there is no option to modify this. So what this DHCP option set will do, it's going to assign a domain name and a domain name server. So I know this is difficult to understand, so let me try to create one more. So see, let me give any name, ABC, whatever it is. Here you can specify your own custom domain name server. Okay. So if you look here, if you go back, I told you that depending upon your subnet, the second IP is always been reserved to a DNS server. So if you don't want that specific DNS IP to be assigned, we can specify our own custom DNS server here. Okay, sorry, this is domain name. I'm sorry. So by default, let me go back. I'm sorry. So by default, the domain name which AWS is going to assign is called uswest2.compute.internal. So if you go here and see your system which comes back, it has this domain name assigned to it called uswest2.compute.2.internal. Okay. The second thing is new. It's called domain name server. So rather than using this .2, you can you can also assign your own custom DNS server, and you can give 4 here. So for example, rather than using that second one, I can give my own custom DNS server if it's running in my own AWS environment. Okay, so this one I can give 4 more. Same way I can use NTP server. I can specify the NTP server over here, and NetBIOS I think is specific to Windows, so I never touched that part. So I don't know how to use that. But this is the place from where you are getting your IP as well as these domain names. So let me do one thing. Test DHCP option. Okay. And rather than using the default domain name, which has been assigned to your IP, that's uswest2.compute.internal, let me use example.com. Okay. And I'm not going to touch these options. Create DHCP option. And while this is loading, let me give you some talks regarding this. So check this doc. And if you don't want to go through this entire doc, just read these 2 lines or 3 lines. So in that they have mentioned that the default DNS is 0.2, depending upon your subnet range. And the public DNS host name is the combination of these, like ec2-public IPv4.compute for US East region. And for the rest of the region, it's different.
Prashant, I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but I don't see your document you are sharing.
Yeah, I'm not sharing right now, but
Okay.
I'm just posted you guys on the Slack channel. So see, this is what we are going to get. Just look at the Slack channel. I posted you guys the link. So is that answer your question? Where you are getting your domain name, where you are getting your IP addresses?
Yes. Thank you.
Question: can I use my local DNS server for this? Like, rather than a DNS system which is hosted in the AWS environment, can I use something which is running on my local network?
Okay, so I know we are digressing from the main issue, but okay, yeah, the answer is yes. And how to do that? Let me show you this really quickly. So, this is Route 53. You are aware of this Route 53, right? There you can host your own zones, right? AWS managed means you can set up your own domain, you can purchase your own domain with the help of Route 53. So earlier, what we need to do, so your question is, for example, you have your AWS infrastructure, and in your first party data center, you have your own DNS server, okay? And because I'm a Linux guy, so I always believe it's going to be a bind, right? So rather than using the Amazon DNS, you want to use this bind. So that's your question, right? Did I understand your question correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So earlier, it's pretty difficult to use this DNS server, which is hosted in our own data center. So what AWS did last year, they have announced this new service called Endpoints, which is called inbound endpoints and outbound endpoints. So let me show you. And this simplifies the whole DNS stuff pretty much. So earlier, before that, what exactly we need to do in our AWS VPC or in AWS infrastructure, we need to set up our own DNS server, and that DNS server will act like a forwarder. So whatever the AWS, so for example, here we have some instances. So we need to, if we need to communicate to our 1P data center bind, we need to forward all of our queries from this instance to this DNS server, and this DNS server, which lies in our AWS environment, is going to forward all the requests to this 1P data center. So last year they have released this service during the reInvent called this resolver. What it is going to do, let me configure this endpoint. Next. So there is something called inbound endpoint and outbound endpoint. So what inbound endpoint will do, inbound, okay, and outbound. Let me explain it to you in terms of outbound because your question related to outbound. What outbound will do is rather than we need to configure our own DNS server, we can use this outbound service. Let me show you here. Okay. Let me give its name, any ABC my VPC. And this is going to set up one Elastic Network interface in all of my subnet. Okay. And let me show you the real part. So if you go back, yeah, this is the most important thing. You are going to create something called a rule. So what rule is going to do is, so for example, let's say in your 1P data center, you have hosted a domain called xyz.com. So what rule will tell you that if any request related to xyz.com comes, forward it to this and forward to 1P data center. So basically the main thing which I'm trying to tell you guys here is that what AWS is trying to do is going to provide you their own managed DNS server rather than you setting up your own DNS server to forward your request. Okay, is that answers your question? So if
Yes,
this
Prashant.
is load, let me
Thank
give
you.
XYZ, and here you can mention, for example, xyz.com. You can choose your VPC. Okay, and outbound endpoint we need to configure on the last in the step. And here you mention your IP address of your DNS server, which is hosted in your 1P data center. So let's say 192.168.1.50, and obviously it should be running on port 53. So this is I think we are using it heavily, and that is how you can will forward your request. Same way, if you want to use our Route 53, which has been hosted from your from 1P data center, so that means the request is the other way. So from your 1P data center, first party data center, if you want to use the Route 53, you can use something called this inbound endpoint. Okay. So with this out of the way, so far we have created our own VPC. We have created 2 instances in public and private subnet. Let's move to the next part, security group or NACL. Okay. So I know security group seems to be like pretty simple topic, but when I talk to few people, like people do not actually understand how security group works behind the scene. So let me, okay, security group. Okay. So what is security group? Security group is basically nothing, but you can think it like your virtual firewall. Or last time I gave the analogy, think of it like a IP table in your Linux system. Okay. And this is one of the misconception about the security group, that security group is associated with your instance. This is wrong. Security group is not associated with your instance. Security group is associated with your ENI, which is called Elastic Network Interface. Elastic Network Interface. And what is the Elastic Network Interface? Think of it like your network interface card, because it's all virtual now. So in AWS term, it's called ENI. So this is a common misconception that security group is associated with your instance. No, it's associated with the Elastic Network Interface, and Elastic Network Interface in turn associated with your instance. So let me show you this with the help of this example. So if you go to any of these instance, go here, action, go to networking, and go to change security group. See here, your instance ID is associated with Elastic Network Interface, ENI. It is not associated with your instance. Once again, I'm emphasizing that. And because it is associated with your Elastic Network Interface, you can assign a multiple security group to your instance. So like last time we have associated this security group to our instance, we can even associate this security group to our instance. And the way this is going to work, so for example, in one of the security group, let's say I open the port 22, and in this default security group, I open a port 80. So when if any of the requests come, this is when security group is going to analyze that request. This is going to be a union of both of those. So from security group of point of view, or for the instance point of view, they are going to allow both the port 22 as well as the port 80. Is that part is clear? This part and this part.
Yes.
Yes.
So if you drill further here, and if you look at this guy, network interface, you will see something called ETH0, right? If you click here, you will see this network interface ENI. Okay, let me go over here. This network interface. This interface is associated with our VPC. It has this MAC ID, everything, subnet, and ultimately, if you look at this guy, instance ID.
Prashant, I had one question. I believe we can associate multiple ENIs with an EC2 instance, and
Exactly.
within a ENI we can assign multiple IPs as well. So, what is the difference between that? Assigning multiple IPs to a particular ENI and assigning multiple ENIs to an EC2 instance.
I mean, both of them are the same thing, but it depends upon your requirement. So, for example, I know in one of my colleagues, he assigned two ENI to an instance, and the only reason for that because he wants to configure a bonding. You know the network bonding, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So that is one of the use case I am aware of that. In my case, I haven't used two ENIs with one instance because nowadays you know that things are pretty flexible. And if one of the instance goes down, we can spin up another instance in a matter of few seconds. So earlier I used to configure all those bondings with the ENI. And one more thing you can do if you have the multiple ENIs associated with the instance. For example, with this ENI, you can associate a different security group. And with the ENI number 2, let's say, you can associate a different security group.
Okay.
So honestly, in practical use, I don't know what is the use case if you are going to assign two different security groups to two ENI, but this you can use.
Okay.
Okay. And one more doubt I want to be really throw it out on the way. This security group does not work like a traditional firewall. Traditional firewall. What that means is like, for example, okay, before going to that point, the default rule or the default implicit rule in a case of a security group is deny, which means you can only allow something. So let me show you this. So let me go back here. Okay. And let me try to create a new security group. So here it is. Okay. So if we haven't specifically or implicitly allowing something, it's deny by default. Okay. I don't know if my internet is slow or the AWS is slow today. So while this is loading, let me try to show you one more this part now. So it does not work like a traditional firewall. So what traditional firewall will do? So let's say I have a rule number 22. Okay, rule number 1 where I am allowing the port number 22, and then I have a rule number 2 where I am denying that traffic. So it goes step by step, right? The traditional firewall, like it will read this rule here. It will say, oh, this port number 22 is allowed. So it will never ever going to look at this port number 22 or rule number 2. The way security group works, it's going to take this entire rule set at one go. It analyzes it and then it is going to decide whether to allow this traffic or not. So in this case, if I allow it and then deny it, by default it's denied. The other counterpart of this is something called NACL, which we are going to discuss it after this, where it goes rule by rule. Okay, so, and this is still loading. While this is loading, one more feature of security group.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, in this rule 1 and 2, so if you allow rule 1, then rule 2 is not going to work at all, right?
Yes.
So it's always, allows. If it is first one is allowing, so everything is allowing. The second one will not execute at all if it is denied.
I mean, try this. If we will try this in the hands-on, but in case of security group, all the rules are evaluated at once. It's not that it's going to read the rule 1 and read rule 2. Try it by yourself. Try to allow one port and then deny it.
Okay.
It will not allow you. Second thing is security group by default, they are stateful. I mean, they understand the state of your traffic. So for example, if I allow in port number 22 as a part of ingress, I don't need to allow it as a part of egress. So what that means? So for example, if I'm allowing this port 22, okay, to go, or let's say port number 80. So I have established a web server where I'm allowing the port 80. Okay, that means a user from any of the IP can access this server, right? So if I am allowing a user, they don't need a return path. So for example, if they're accessing this server, they need to have a return path so that the content will be served back to them, right? The content. So security group nature is stateful. If we have the allow rule, ingress rule, by default, it will have the egress rule. It knows the state of our traffic. So if inbound traffic is allowed, then by default, you are allowing the outbound traffic also. You don't need to mention a specific egress rule in your security group. So, okay.
So by default, it allows that ephemeral ports, high range ports for return traffic.
Yes. So you can even customize that. So that's what I want to show you here. Let me put any guy. This guy. This one. Create. Okay. So here we do not have any rule here, and the outbound, like we have discussed, it is allowing all the traffic by default. And one of the reason for that, like there are standard ports 0 to 1023, that is called a well-defined port, and out of 1024 to all the way up to 65536, you have like all these ports. So these are called ephemeral ports, or whatever the higher end ports. So like I told you guys, let's say let's take the same example. I have Apache server up and running here, and I allowed that ingress port in my security group. So let's go back here, go to inbound, edit rules, add rule. Let me search for that HTTP. This guy, and I'm allowing it from everywhere. Okay. So I'm allowing this web 80 in my ingress rule in the security group. And let's say you are one of the users who is trying to access this port. And like I told you guys, by default, security group is stateful. So it knows that if the connection is established from this user to serve its content back, this traffic is already been allowed. Security group knows the state of it. But to serve those connections, if you go to the Apache, your Apache is going to open a random port, which is a higher level port, right, to establish that connection back to your user. So that's why in most of the cases, because we don't know what is that random port, or if you have your own custom application, your developer can define those custom ports. Like these are the port range which is being opened for your custom application. But in most of the cases, we don't know those higher end ports. So that's why by default, we allowed all the outbound routes or the outbound traffic going out to the internet. But in inbound, we need to be really specific what exactly we are allowing. That part is clear? I will just pause for 30 seconds for if you guys have any question.
I mean, it's for predefined services like HTTP, HTTPS, SSH, or it's for any service?
You mean this random port or what?
I mean,
exactly?
predefined.
Yes,
No, that outbound
exactly.
connection, it will identify.
I mean,
It will
every
identify the
application when
traffic.
for every application, it always open a bunch of random ports. So if you run that command, for example, netstack-a, you will see all those ports listed here, which are the high-end ports. And one of the primary reasons for choosing those high-end ports so that it will not conflict with your application. So the same example is Apache by default listen on port number 80. But on the same machine, you cannot set up your Nginx server because it listen on port number 80. So in case if you want both HTTP and Nginx need to be listened on the same machine or need to be run on the same server, you need to change the port of this either for Apache or for Nginx. And in case of Linux, there's a file called etc services where you can see all these well-defined ports. So yep.
Yeah. Now my question is, I have one application which uses customized ports. Let's say 2040. For that application also, security group will allow outbound traffic like higher range ports.
If you have this outbound port open, and you know that here, rather than using all these well-defined ports, you can also define your old custom rule. So here you can give that port number that you want this port number to be open. Or if you want to give a range of ports, you can also define like, let's say this one. I want all these ports to be open in one go, rather than specifying each and every port individually. Is that answer your question? So outbound rules, yes. By default, I always allow this outbound rule because I'm not worried where my application is going to connect. We can always filter this traffic at the NACL level, but at the security group level, this is what I always did. But I always been very careful what need to be allowed. Okay. Any other question?
Prashant, I had, a question regarding Internet Gateway and NAT Gateway, similar to this. Like we know that if we have attached an Internet Gateway, then the traffic will go out and will come up inside of the VPC. But I just wanted to confirm, like for NAT Gateway, like if I'm installing a Yum package on my Linux machine, so I send a request and the response is coming from the internet. So how is that response coming from the internet? I find it difficult to understand because we have blocked traffic from outside. So how does that happen in terms of networking?
If you wait for a few more minutes, we are going to discuss NAT gateway. That is the topic number 6. So just give me a few minutes. I'm going to show you like how the source IP and the destination IP change on the header field.
Okay, cool.
Just hopefully we will be able to reach to NAT gateway today. Okay, so any question regarding security group? So I think I did not show you guys this. So let me clean this out. So yesterday I told you guys this instance, and now we are clear that security group is not associated with the instance. Security group is associated with the ENI, which is attached to an instance. Then we have this layer of security group, which is our IP tables. Think of it like a IP tables or a virtual firewall. And then after that, we have called NACL, which we are going to discuss it now. Okay. So if the traffic is leaving your instance, it is going to follow this path: your instance, your ENI, then security group, and then NACL. And think of it, if the traffic is want to hit your instance, it is going to follow the reverse path. So first it's going to hit your NACL, then it's going to hit your security group, then the ENI, and then it will reach to your instance. Just remember this path. If any one of you planning to write that AWS security certification, especially the assured one, there must be a 1 or 2 question related to that. What is the path your instance is going to follow? They sometimes mess up this, like they put NACL in front of this ENI or this one, but this is the forward path. If your traffic, if the traffic is leaving your instance, And if the traffic is going to hit your instance, it is going to follow the exactly opposite path. But it first is going to hit the NACL, then security group, then ENI, and then instance. Okay. And before we are going to talk about the NACL, one of my favorite security group feature is you can logically refer a security group. That is, let me pick any port. Let's say SMTP, port number 25. Here, you can specify the logical security group. That is, you can refer the other security group within the security group. Now, think of the use case where this is important. Let's say I am developing a 3-tier application, which is having a web tier, then let's say app tier, which is a kind of a middleware, and then we have the database. Okay. This web tier, I want everyone to hit. Like, this is your public facing application, right? But I don't want anyone to know about my database tier or the application about my application tier or the database tier. So what I can do in web tier, I can allow all the traffic, that is port 80 is open to everyone. But in the app tier security group, I will only allow the security group which is defined for the web tier. And the same way in the database security group, I can only allow the security group of my app tier. Is that part is clear? Because this is what, whenever I design an infrastructure, I used to, I am really want to make sure that only the traffic which has been, for example, if web only need to talk to app, it can only talk to app. It will not talk to any other component. Or if app need to talk to database, it should not talk to any other component. Like, for example, the web should not directly talk to my database application. So this is really useful when you are designing some real-time application. Once again, this part is clear that you can logically refer a security group within a security group. Any question related to that before we move to the next part? Actually, I need to put someone on mute. Reddy Shekhar, I need to put you on mute. Any questions so far related to security group? Okay. Then let's move to the next topic, NACL, or a network access control list. Okay. And whoever who attend my yesterday session, I told you guys in the last 8 years of my this AWS journey, I never test NACL. Whatever it is comes by default, I always use that. And one of the primary reasons is, like, if we are debugging some issue, I don't want a 2 level of complexity. I always want that I can always focus on my security group or any other thing to see why I'm not able to communicate to the particular instance or where exactly it is failing. NACL introduced one more level of complexity. Now, I'm not saying don't use it, but it's completely up to you if you want to configure it or not. So what NACL will do, once again, let me speak like a broken band. Instance, your security group level, your security group applied to a ENI. Your NACL applied to a subnet. Not subnet, but subnet. So yesterday, like, we are taking IP tables as an analogy for security group. For NACL, think of it like your, let's say, router. So before any traffic is going to hit your instance, it will go through your router. And at router level, you have a bunch of ACLs, right? So if your traffic drops at the ACLs level, it will never reach to your instance. Correct? The same way, you can filter your traffic at the network level or NACL level, NACL, or network access control list before it will even hit your instance. Is that part is clear? And I have created this doc, I think. Let me share it with you guys. Give me 1 second. I'm sharing it with you guys on Slack channel. This is one of the famous interview questions. I think most of the time they ask this question: what is the difference between a NACL and a security group? Okay, just go through it once. I'm going to explain it to you guys one by one, but please go through this at least once before you are appearing for any of the AWS related interview. I have given the AWS interview around in 2016, and even one of the AWS guys from the networking team, they asked me this question: what is the difference between a NACL and security group? So this is one of the common questions. Okay, and one of the primary difference between a NACL and a security group, which everyone wants to listen, is NACLs are stateless. So what do I mean by stateless? So I told you, like, security group is stateful, which means security group know that if you allow the port 80 for the inbound connection, it knows that it already established a stream of connection so that the request can go outside. But in the case of a NACL, if you allowing port 80 at the ingress level, you must need to define port 80 at the egress level also. That is both for the inbound connection as well as for the outbound connection. So rather than explaining you guys in terms of theory, let me show you where exactly the NACL lies. So this is the one. And by default, like I told you, when you created a VPC, NACL is created for you. And they have this set of inbound rules, where the first rule is to allow all the traffic and deny everything else. Same way, there's an outbound rule where it is allowing all the traffic and denying all the traffic. And one of the major difference again between a security group and NACL, in case of security group, the implicit is deny, and you can only allow traffic. That is, in security group, you cannot define a deny parameter. So if you go back to a security group, not here, let me pick any of these security groups. This one. So if you see, let's say any port, let's see DNS port, okay? So when I'm doing this, I'm allowing the DNS traffic. There is no place where I can define that I'm denying this traffic. But in case of NACLs or network access control list, if I try to create one more rule, let's say 101, I have the option to allow or deny. In security group, there is no option for allow or deny. It is deny by default, you can allow it. But in case of NACL, you can allow or deny. Is that part is clear? This is one of the, these are the two major differences: stateful or stateless, allow or deny. Okay. And one more thing, like I showed you guys, security group you can reference logically. That is, within the security group, you can refer another security group. But in case of a NACL, you cannot refer it logically. You need to mention CIDR or IP address. Okay. Is that part is clear regarding NACL? This is just a brief introduction, but I want you guys to aware of this because this is one of the most important interview questions. Difference between a security group and NACL. Any question?
Prashant, just like security groups, we can just like security group, we can create NACL also. And can we attach multiple NACL, or there is only one default NACL attached to a subnet?
So there's one NACL per subnet, and you can always create your own custom NACLs. It's completely up to you. But like I told you, I never touched NACL in my whole life. But yes,
Okay.
you can create multiple. But there's only one NACL per subnet.
Okay.
Okay. And one
Rules
thing I
are
think
needed in both direction means.
So for security group, like you only allow the port 80, and you don't need to worry if on the outbound side it will allow or not. But in case of NACL, if you allow some port, you need to allow in both inbound as well as in outbound direction, because it's not stateful, it is stateless. So let me give you the example. And just to tell you, this NACL rules, they are read number by number. So for example, 100 is going to get the top priority, and if I'm going to specify 101, that will be a lower priority. So it goes by number. So if I'm going to specify 90, so this rule have a higher priority as compared to 100. So it always is this number. So let's say I'm allowing port this telnet. So if I add this rule, okay, this one, oh sorry, I add in the outbound. So if I add this rule at the outbound, I also need to specify the same rule as the inbound also. This is one of the major differences between NACL and security. Okay, and one more thing I want to show you guys. If you can see here, we have three rules: 90, 100, and one is star, which is a catch-all, where I'm denying it. But if you go here and try to see that rule, you will not see that rule, the star one. So that is an implicit deny. If you are not allowing any traffic, that is denied by default, even in NACL. So here, let me show you. This is the one which I've created. Then we have the all traffic, which is allow, and then we have the all traffic, which is deny, which does not make any sense because we are already allowing all the traffic. But if you go here, you will not see that explicit deny, implicit deny over here. So if I do this, and save it, you will see that deny rule is still in there. Okay. So for the purpose of this demo, let me open all traffic. Okay. So my recommendation, don't try to change any of the parameter on the NACL side. Mostly work with your network team, how they are going to route a request at the router level, or if you are communicating your VPC. So like I told you guys, in most of the cases, not all, unless until you are working for some startup where you have your whole infrastructure in AWS, most of the time, this is how the architecture look like. Your VPC is going to communicate to your first party data center, right? Data center, right? And how they're going to communicate it, either via VPN, okay, or either via the direct connect. Okay. So when they are establishing this connection between your VPC and VPN, right, it's going to be a private one or within the direct connect, right? So within this one, sorry, this not VPN is not a private, it's going to go over the internet. Ask your networking team to filter out the traffic rather than me as a system guy who's filtering a traffic. So only they can decide what need to be allowed in this VPN tunnel or what need to be denied. For my side, I am allowing everything, but I'm filtering at the security group level. Let them push it to them so that they can filter at their level. And it will simplify your life when you are trying to debug some issue where you will need to know like, okay, where exactly is that traffic is getting dropped. If you are allowing everything at the NACL level, you only have a one place called security group where you need to check. Okay. Any question related to that before we move to the next topic? Okay, but anyways, guys, all those people who joined late, one thing I have cleared today, that today's session is like 1 hour 30 minutes, because we need to cover a lot, and I don't think so we will be able to cover all these topics. So whatever we are able to cover today, I will do a hard stop at 9:30, and we are going to continue all those topics next week. Okay, that is fine. Okay, let's move to the next topic called Vpc Flow Logs. Okay, let me do one more thing. Vpc Flow Logs. Okay. Once again, I try to clear one of the common misconception about the Vpc Flow Log. Once again, I will take security group as an example. Security group, from now point onwards, you will say to anyone, it is not associated with your instance. It will associate with your ENI. Okay. Same way, VPC Flow Log does not capture any data. It only captures metadata. No data. Only metadata. Metadata. That is, with no data, I mean you cannot do any analysis on the top of it. Let me repeat this point. VPC Flow Logs does not capture any data. It only captured metadata, which I'm going to show you now what exactly the metadata is. You cannot do any analysis on the top of it. This is a common misconception. If you need to do a analysis, you need to configure utility, for example, TCP dump or snort. Using VPC Flow Logs, you cannot see like what exactly, if you need to do any a deep level inspection, for example, what is happening on my layer 2 or layer 3, you can't do it. Not layer 2, 3 or 4. For that, you need an additional tool. It only captures metadata. Let me give you one example how the VPC Flow Log will look like. Let me post it on the Slack channel. This is one of the common example of a VPC Flow Log. This is how the VPC Flow Log will look like. Okay. Let me this guy. And just to give you what exactly is these fields will look like. Okay. So these ones. And in most of the companies wherever I have worked, this is one of the strict security requirements, that to have VPC Flow Log enabled by default. Okay. So let me show you how to enable it rather than discussing all these things theoretically. So if you go to your VPC, and I will highly recommend you guys to enable this VPC Flow Log. Okay. Once again, this is pretty slow. So let me continue while this is loading. But before that, any questions so far, or do you guys have any experience related to the VPC Flow Logs which you want to share, or any place in the interview where you have asked this question related to VPC Flow Log? Are you guys still with me?
Yes, Prashant. I wanted to know, yeah, is there any cost associated with enabling VPC Flow Logs? Additional?
Yep. If this is screen will be loaded, I will show you what are those costs involved, especially related to CloudWatch logs.
So another one is the VPC flow can be delivered to an S3 or CloudWatch logs. So for that, you need to pay for it.
Exactly. So I'm going to show you guys how that is going to work. So while that part, that VPC Flow Log is still loading, why my internet is so slow today? Okay, it's always slow anyway. So VPC Flow Log, you can enable it at the capture level point. There's something called capture point. Okay. So this is at the 3 level. First is called VPC level. Second is called subnet level. And third one is called interface level. And once again, this is just my personal opinion. I always allow it or enable it at the VPC level. Because if you enable it to the VPC level, by default, the subnet as well as interface will inherit it. So it is by default enable it for both of these two levels. If you enable it for the subnet level, it will by default inherit it for the interface level, and interface level, you know. So with VPC level, I mean when you enable at the VPC level, all the data which is flowing between your VPC subnet and instance level, it is being captured. If you enable it at the subnet level, let's say I enable it only for 10.1.0/24, it only captures the data for this particular subnet. It will going to skip all the data for the other subnet. Interface level, you know, like I'm enabling it only for the specific level. But once again, my recommendation is to enable it at the VPC level so that it will pass down to all the below of all these below levels, subnet and interface level. So if that screen is loaded, then I will show you. Slow. Internet is fine. Something to do with the AWS today. Okay. Something on that.
Prashad, I think there is issue with your browser. You have to update it.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Okay, so if you go to that VPC, which we have configured, if you go to this flow logs, there's a tab called create flow logs. Okay, and once again, you don't need to configure all these things manually. After this session, I will share you our Terraform script how to do that. Okay, even I have a one Lambda function which I have wrote. So what it is going to do, it's going to pass all of your VPC which is present in your environment, and it will see if the flow log is enabled or not. It even has the capability to enable the flow log for you. And even AWS have a service called AWS config, which will do the same thing. It will check if the VPC flow log is enabled, and you have the option either it's going to send you a SNS, it's either going to send you an email via the SNS or via the Slack channel to see if the flow log is enabled or not. But I will highly recommend to enable this flow log, or your security team will push you to enable this flow log. So once you have go to that flow log tab, you have the option which type of traffic you want to capture, which is accept traffic or reject traffic or all traffic. Once again, I always go with the all, which is going to capture both the accept as well as the reject traffic. Okay, I will show you with the help of example how exactly this looks like. Maxxium aggregation level. This is something new which has been introduced by AWS. So you want to push the log at one go, or you want to wait for 10 minutes where it's going to aggregate all the logs and then it is going to push. And where exactly it's going to push, you can configure it's going to push either to the CloudWatch log or to the S3 bucket. Okay, this is again based on your preference or how complex is your environment. And one more thing I want to emphasize here, if you are designing any of the application based on this, flow logs are not real time. It will take some time for flow logs to being delivered to your CloudWatch log or S3 bucket. So there's always a lag when the event happens and when you receive your flow log at the CloudWatch level or at the S3 level. Okay, so don't design your application or your filtering or your whatever your security thing you're trying to design based on the flow logs. You will not get a real-time data. Okay, this is based on my personal experience. And honestly, I'm not a security guy, so I will show you what exactly my part as a system guy, and then it's all depend upon your security team how they're going to analyze that log. Okay. The next thing is it's completely up to you where you want to send this flow log, either to CloudWatch logs or to S3 bucket. If you want to send it to a CloudWatch log, you need to create a CloudWatch log group. Okay. I don't know if you guys are aware of this one, but let me create a CloudWatch log group. So think of this log group as a kind of a folder if you do not understand how this CloudWatch log group works. So we are basically creating a folder or a shared drive where we are pushing all these logs. So let me go to this log group. This log, let's get started. Action, create log group. And I will say my demo. Okay. So now this log group is created. If I go back here, this one. Now I need to select a IAM role. Okay. And why this is important that I need to select a IAM role. Once again, this is one of the common misconception, and let me clarify that. So if you go to this AWS screen, right? You will see all these bunch of these services, right? EC2, Lightsail, whatever it is. Okay, so let me take an example of this EC2, S3, CloudWatch, okay, VPC. They all are the AWS services, right? By default, we can't say, or this is something which has been, we don't know. These all exist in the AWS public workspace. Right? These are all different services. If you think of, like, for example, whatever company you are working, if you go to their website, let's say I go to any of these, let's say I go to the Google, right? So in case of a Google, you will see all these tabs like Gmail, images, or whatever it is. Think of it like there might be a possibility that this store tab or this image tab will be handled by one team. There is a completely separate team in Google who is handling that image portion. There will be a completely separate team in Google who is handling the Gmail portion. So same way, in AWS also, these are completely different services and they exist, they will be handled by a different team. So from our endpoint user, if I want to communicate to one of the services, for example, here I want my VPC Flow Logs to go to the CloudWatch log bucket. And if I want to interact with the public workspace, so I need to establish some kind of a trust relationship that, okay, I'm pushing this log to your public workspace, even if it exists in my account. How can I make it sure that this will send it to that particular bucket? And the way you can do it is the help of IAM role. So you need to establish that relationship and you need to define it with the help of something called IAM policy. So let me do that. I will go to setup permission, create new IAM role, and this is how this policy document look like. So basically, I'm telling it, give me a permission from VPC point of view to create a log group, create a log stream, describe this. So basically, the point I'm trying to drive here, this is the most important thing. Put log event, that is, send these logs which is generated on this VPC to the CloudWatch log. It's just giving like asking a permission or establishing a trust relationship between my VPC and my CloudWatch log bucket. So let me create that. And just to make sure, guys, this is just an oversimplified version of this IAM role. IAM role is pretty complex. This guy, if I choose, now I have this flow log enabled and I will go to create. Okay. Now, while I told you guys earlier, this is not a real time. It will take some time for these logs to be showed up here. So if I go here, I'm not seeing any log. So let's wait for 1 minute, and in between I will show you a few more things. So remember this point, I told you guys this is something called a capture point. So I enabled this flow logs at the VPC level. And I told you, like, this has been inherited to all this is a kind of a pass down. It will pass to at the subnet level as well as the interface level. So now if I go back to my VPC, let me select that particular VPC. I go to my subnet, right? Let's choose any of these subnets. And if you go to this flow log, you will see this flow logs will be enabled by default for that particular subnet. Okay. If you further drill down, go to my instance, go to any of this instance, okay, and I will go to Ionised. And you will see flow logs here. You will see that the same flow logs will be enabled. Okay, so that is the advantage of enabling the flow logs at the VPC level. Okay, I will pause here for 1 second. And any question regarding this flow logs?
What do you mean we can't do any analysis on it?
Yeah, I'm coming to that part. Just give me 1 minute. Any question regarding how to configure it and how to do that?
So which one is better, CloudWatch or put in S3?
It's completely depend upon your requirement. So that is what I'm going to show it now, but I'm just waiting for this CloudWatch logs to be showed up here. Okay, it's going to take some time. So while we are waiting for that, let me show you something. So if you go here, you have the option even to export this data from this CloudWatch log to S3. You can even send it to the Amazon Lambda, AWS Lambda. The way I have configured this in my environment is that I'm sending this stream of data to Amazon Elasticsearch. Okay, and there I have those Kibana configured from where I can see which user is, for example, in case of Apache, I will see how many 200 requests are coming, how many are like 403, all those things. So even if you configure at the CloudWatch level, you can export this data to your S3 or to any of these services. You can even configure this CloudWatch log to send it to your Kinesis stream. And from Kinesis stream, it's completely depend upon you. Like, for example, if you have a large set of streaming data, you can even send it to your Kinesis stream from here. If you want, I can forward you that doc. I already configured it from CloudWatch log. I'm forwarding it to my Kinesis stream. Okay, so still it is loading. While this is loading,
Prashant, are these CloudWatch logs also being stored in S3? I mean, log streams.
Yes,
if we are
that's a good question.
having so much.
Yeah, under the hood, CloudWatch logs also uses S3.
Okay, so the storage cost would be the same for transferring it to S3 and CloudWatch logs, I believe, then, cost-wise.
Yes, but the advantage of using a CloudWatch log group is that you can do much more things as compared to S3. For example, S3 you can use it with Athena to find it out. But with CloudWatch log, you have the advantage that you can forward it even to that this dashboard,
Kibana.
this Kibana and Elasticsearch.
Yep.
So sorry, I did not understand. CloudWatch logs are by default stored in S3. Is that what you're saying?
No. So under the hood, it uses S3 as a technology to store those logs.
Okay.
By default, not. So same way, for example, if you think about EBS snapshot, when you take that snapshot, it by default stored on S3 bucket, right? But the difference between that, you do not have any control over those S3 buckets. It lies on the AWS end. You can just put your logs, you just put your snapshot on those S3 buckets. The only way you can interact with this with the help of AWS API, but you do not have any control over those S3 buckets. Same is over here. CloudWatch logs under the hood, they are putting it on the S3 bucket, but you do not have any control over that. So in that case, at the time of configuration of Vpc Flow Logs, you can refer it to the S3 bucket, which is owned by your account. Okay.
Got the point.
So now,
Thanks.
yeah. So now, as you can see, we are start seeing those CloudWatch logs after a delay of like 4 or 5 minutes. And if you further drill down, you will see this. Okay. So let me copy this and paste it here. Okay. So the first field, if you are seeing it over here, this is called a VPC Flow Log version. This is something a API version. If you guys use CloudFormation, they have their own API version. So for example, this guy has a Flow Log version 2. Okay, this is not important. The second field is your account ID. Okay. The third field is your ENI interface, for which it is capturing the logs. The fourth field is your source IP, and fifth field is your destination IP. This one. The next field is your source port, and this is your destination port. Okay, this is the protocol. I don't know what is the use of this sixth. I don't know what is this sixth protocol is all about. Then this is the number of packets. This is the byte size. This is the start time, the epoch one, the end time. I told you like we have enabled both accept as well as reject. So here the status is reject, and the last field is okay. So this last field is for the log status, which means if the data is being transferred from all the way from your VPC Flow Logs to this CloudWatch log endpoint. So that means that your data is logging normally to your CloudWatch log. There are few more fields. I think it's called no data and skip data. If there's some network issue, then you will see all those fields, but most of the time you have this. But the main field which we always emphasize is this reject. If you are seeing too many reject requests or you are seeing too many accept requests. So let me show you this one. This accept. Okay. Now coming back to again, as you can see, this is all metadata. You don't know at which layer of your TCP IP this whole thing is going on, right? You cannot deep dive inside it like we are doing in the case of TCP dump. So that's what I want to tell you in terms of metadata. The only thing which we can do is see the accept and reject requests, how many bytes, what are the protocol, the source IP and the destination IP. But on the top of that, we can't do much. And that is the use of the VPC Flow Logs. Is that part is clear? Okay. Now, there are some limitations of flow logs. What are the things which they don't capture? And this is not related to an interview question, but it's mostly been asked in any of the, for example, I think I wrote that AWS security exam almost 5 or 6 months back. There, this is one of the common question. What are the things that your flow log does not capture? So one thing is, you know, there's something called a metadata server. So there's a URL called 169.254.169.254, right? This is a URL which give you information about, and it is running on each and every EC2 instance, and it will give you all the information about your hypervisor. So when you're going to do a curl request, it will talk to your hypervisor and give you all the information. So let me give you the complete syntax. So for example, I'm pasting this in on a Slack channel. Let me, for example, in my case, let me need to find it out what is the AMI ID for this particular instance. So that I can do with while contacting to this metadata server, right? So the communication which is going to the metadata server, this is not being captured in the VPC Flow Logs. Okay. Any DHCP or DNS traffic, like with 0.2 server, which we are communicating to our EC2 instances or to the Route 53, that kind of a traffic is not being captured in the VPC Flow Log. Okay. If you guys are using any Windows server that is communication to any of the license server, that has been not been captured in the VPC Flow Log. So this is just something if you are planning to write any of the AWS security certification, they ask you this kind of a question. But for your real-time scenario or for the interview point of view, the two important point is, first thing is VPC Flow Log only captured metadata. The second most important point is it's not real time. There will be some lag. Okay. I know it's 9:30, so we only covered up to this point. So let's cover all these topics next week. I don't want to stretch it because it will take at least one plus hour to cover all these topics. But I'll promise you guys I will cover these topics next week. Let me stop the recording.